Fáilte. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree. I'm your host, Terrance Ó Domhnaill. Thank you for joining me again this week. As tempting as it may be, I'm not going to talk very much about the new war between U.S., Israel, and Iran this week, except as it affects the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. It's time I pivot back to Palestine this week, so I want to offer up some news stories from several media sources. Trouble is, there are always so many news stories in the media and op-ed articles posted in Substack and Medium.com about the genocide in Palestine, it's hard to choose the right ones to talk about. So gather around, sit you down somewhere comfortable for a bit as I sort through the lot, try to highlight the stories I eventually chose to present to you. Let's start off with this story from last week of the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, the Baptist minister, white Christian nationalist, fervent Zionist, telling the world that Israel should be allowed to take all the land it wants in the Middle East to set up their greater Israel. You know, that mythical land of Abraham. There was outrage across the U.S. and the Middle East and in the Muslim-led countries up until the U.S. started bombing Iran last Saturday. Now it's all but forgotten. The sentiments are still there across a large section of the Christian Zionist landscape in the U.S., though. It's been replaced on the surface with the next big thing. But I'm sure we'll see this again soon. Israel has instilled so much fear in the public institutions across the U.S. these days that any mention anywhere of Palestine or the hint of public support elicits a cancellation or sanction out of fear that Trump and Israel will find a way to financially punish anyone from even thinking about it. Ms. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur, is now so much of a persona non grata in the U.S. for just doing her job so well, no one in the country will touch anything with her name attached for fear of Trump. This is the level of cowardice that Trump has instilled across the public and private landscapes of the United States. These public institutions who depended so much on federal money to operate every year have become so afraid that Trump will take their money away that they have lost all semblance of courage, which all rolls into the pervasive money culture that has become America. It's no longer the land of the free and home of the brave, but the land of cowards and home to the greedy. These days, the U.S. public support of Israel over its own citizens is so blatant that the U.S. is setting up passport services to illegal West Bank settlers, who may also be dual Israeli-American citizens. This is another spit-in-your-face moment to the Palestinian authorities as they're trying to drum up international support for an independent Palestinian state, telling them that any and all Israelis are worth more than any Palestinians. This shouldn't come as any surprise, though, especially for the Americans and their European supporters. All this dates back to the early 20th century, and even more so starting in 1948. I found a new article from The Cradle reporting that the Israelis have been doing all they can to exterminate the Palestinians from their land by any means possible, right from when the first shiploads of Jewish refugees arrived right after World War II. The British and American gave them all kinds of weapons and stood back to watch or ignore. So the Zionist Jews went on a rampage and killed or expelled over 750,000 Palestinians and took their ancestral lands. They've been trying to finish that goal ever since. This Greater Israel project has been going on for over 70 years now. And with the backing of the U.S., they just might finally complete it soon. Just a side note. There are rumors in the news that after Iran is demolished, Syria and Turkey are next in Israel's sights. I don't think even Trump is that stupid enough to sign on for that. Another related news, the Albanese family is suing the Trump administration over the sanctions against their family because of Mrs. Francesca's UN-mandated support for Palestine. I mean, he came after the whole family, causing all kinds of financial hardships because Ms. Albanese, who is originally from Italy, had been living in New York for her job with the UN. Her daughter was in college in the U.S. They owned a house and so on. Trump sanctioned all that just because she took her job seriously and did a really good job of letting the world know that Israel has been committing a genocide and ethnic cleansing with the support of Western governments. Them and a lot of major corporations who've been making billions of dollars in war profits selling to the U.S. and the Israelis. And some good, not so good news about Palestine. I have a link to a Zateo article regarding the Palestinian film that's up for an Oscar in Hollywood this year called The Voice of Hin Rajab. It seems like when I told you just, like when I told just, it seems like when I just told everyone how the U.S. and European institutions are afraid of Trump if anyone talks support for Palestine, the producers are having a real hard time finding Western theaters to show this emotional documentary. It's about the heart-wrenching efforts to save this little Palestinian girl and her cousin before they were killed by the IDF. Because so much of Hollywood is controlled by the Zionist Jews, I doubt it will win a gold statue, but it's enough that they even put it in the running. That in itself tells us that the attitudes are changing. Whether enough of the right people become influenced by this remains to be seen, but all we can do is keep pushing and say a lot of prayers to whatever gods you want. In more good news, not so good news, the organizers of the Freedom Flotillas are getting another small boat convoy ready to head to Gaza again, this time with a lot more small boats. They hope to overwhelm the IDF by sheer numbers with the hope that some of them will be able to get through. They have thousands of activists from 150 countries now ready to set sail in this new flotilla. I wish them bon voyage. I just hope that the IDF doesn't feel so threatened by all these people that they just start bombing the little fleet, killing a bunch of them, sinking their boats. Well, many people remember what happened to the last Freedom Flotilla that tried to break the blockade last year. Those people got trashed by the IDF before being deported out. Any people getting caught this time might get worse treatment than what happened to Ms. Greta Thunberg and so many others. Would the IDF treat this new group of activists like they treat the Palestinian prisoners? If Israel felt threatened enough by the U.S.'s liberty to attack it and try to sink it in June of 1967, why would they care how many civilian boats they sink and people they kill in this Freedom Flotilla? They could kill 34 U.S. Navy sailors and wound another 171 without immediate repercussions back then. Israel eventually made reparations to the tune of $13 million for the incident. So who thinks they wouldn't do it again with the knowledge that the Trump administration will never hold them to account? Maybe later, perhaps, European and a different U.S. government might try to hold the Israelis to account for such an action if they were to sink boats and kill people. That maybe Israel would pay reparations once again years in the future. But I wouldn't take any bets on that anytime soon, given the current situation in the Middle East. I have another article from Zateo regarding the 165 plus elementary age girls killed in Manab, Iran last Saturday by, most likely, an Israeli bomb. They said to the media that they're sorry. It must have been a targeting mistake. Yeah, right. And I have some extremely wet land for sale in South Florida, including alligators and pythons. Considering, according to UNRWA, Israel has killed so far 230 children in the West Bank and 20,179 children in Gaza just since October 7, 2023. Add to that the thousands of others killed since the ethnic cleansing started in earnest back in 1948. Israel could care less about killing women and children. Their rabid government ministers and people have shouted multiple times to the media in the last 2+ years that the only good Arab is a dead one. I wonder where they got that from. Their American colonial friends, perhaps, who have for more than a couple hundred years decried that the only good Indian, Native Americans, is a dead Indian. As a soldier, I heard many times American soldiers say the same thing about Vietnamese and Muslims throughout my long career. Wipe them off from the face of the earth, unquote, and so much more. It wasn't just soldiers in the heat of battle either. There have been plenty of U.S. politicians with the same attitude as well. We have one now from Florida, a Republican by the name of Randy Fine. He's the most publicly vocal one, but there are a lot more politicians less public about their same viewpoints out there, serving the people of their districts. It's these religious zealots who continue to throw taxpayer money at the Israelis, like the throwing beads and candy at a Mardi Gras parade marchers, while American citizens citizens are being deprived of health care, disaster relief, food benefits for the poor among them, and housing. Add to that the continuing onslaught by the paramilitary soldiers calling themselves ICE, and Americans are starting to get fed up with all of this. This latest war, not war, with Iran is more of the dictator-like actions of a demented president. And I thought genocide Joe Biden was bad. Trump's legacy will be so much worse by the time he's finally gone. I think it already is. This latest war has given Israel an excuse to close all the border crossings into Gaza, West Bank now, although I heard yesterday that they did open one of them. Probably into East Jerusalem as well. While we're all distracted by Trump's war of choice in Iran, Israel has closed off the Palestinians with the intent to close them out in their final solution to the Palestinian problem once and for all. I put that final solution in quotes. I bet some of them are hoping that Iran will drop some bombs in Gaza and the West Bank to do some of their work for them. The Israelis, it doesn't matter how the Arabs are cleansed from greater Israel. All that matters is that they're gone, period. The sooner the better. Especially while the world is looking the other way towards Iran. Is that part of the plan that Netanyahu brought to Trump last week? Hey, let's go after Iran now. And if you don't care, we'll get rid of the rest of those pesky Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank while no one's looking. On a last note, I want to highly recommend anyone interested in taking a peek behind the curtains of American intelligence services through the years, especially since 9/11, to sit down and binge watch the Showtime, now on Netflix, show titled Homeland. I've mentioned this show here before. My wife and I watched the last episode last Monday night. The whole 8-season, 12 episodes a season series was a serious eye-opener for my conservative wife, and it brought back some memories of my own deployments in the Middle East. There's so much truth interwoven throughout this series as the creators took us through the initial wars of the war on terror. It gave me some nightmares. All to end up with a look into the ongoing U.S. war against the rest of the world, especially Russia. This should be a must-see for anyone who cares about democracy in the United States. To prove to you that I have some credit here for the things I talk about, here are a couple of photos taken of me while I was in Afghanistan in 2002, winning hearts and minds while hunting Taliban. Now, here's a picture of me standing tall with my my standard everyday uniform on. This is just one of many. Here's another picture of another one of my what I call field uniforms. This is what I wore when we went out to do things around the countryside. I mean, I can't tell you what we were doing, but note that this was what I was wearing. There's another version of my so-called uniform that I wore running around Afghanistan. This is all of these three pictures just to prove that I'm not giving you a bunch of BS. I was actually there doing things for the government with long hair and a beard and not wearing any kind of uniform. So it gives you an idea of what kind of soldier I was. All right, so now I'm going to take my break here. And after I get back, I'm going to read to you an article written last Saturday by the Pulitzer Prize winning reporter Chris Hedges. I think it sums up the West and Israel pretty well. Just to note, I did reach out to get permission to read this, but I never heard back. Maybe because I have such a small audience, me reading this is inconsequential to his production company. All right, I'll be back in a minute. During this break, I want to take a couple of minutes to explain how you can support this podcast and introduce my website at www.crownofbeha.com. One way is to become a paid subscriber to my Substack page. You can also find the Village Oak Tree on medium.com and YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the videos there as well. The best way is to make a donation through my website. I accept donations of any amount in most currencies, which viewers can visit using the QR code at the top left showing. The website is also listed in the scrolling banner at the bottom of this video. If you're listening to an audio version of the podcast and one of the many mobile apps available, use the link in the podcast description. I've made the website more mobile friendly to view now, so go check it out. So let's go to the website. Click the home button at the bottom here, the first page, and it'll take you to the home page. And at the top, you'll see it has a Google Translator first thing, and then a little information about Gaelic traditions and a little bit about myself here at the bottom. On the menu bar at the top, there's a blog section. And this is where I write about the things that's on my mind about once a week or so. It's all, a lot of it more from a personal viewpoint. Then there's a photography section. And this is where I show pictures of all my misadventures from my youthful days, different places around the world and the United States, some of my military exploits. And then there's a online store. And here, I've got books for sale and different categories of digital photographs that I've taken from around the country. Those are for sale, digitally downloaded, and reasonably priced. Now, there's also a donate and more page. And it's a drop down with podcasts, a little bit more of a detailed bio, and the donation page. If there's any questions, I've set up several methods for visitors to reach out to me directly, whether by social media or by direct mail using the contact page. And there's even a little tech support here. So you want to send me an email, fill this out, and follow the instructions, and you're all set. If you just want to do social media, as you can see, I've got 4 links here and a couple more that you actually have to go search me out on. I hope people watching and listening to this podcast or reading the commentary will take a moment and come visit me at crownofbeha.com. I might even have something you like and you want to come back for more. Welcome back. So, as I said, my plan was to read this. So let me add this. And I will go full screen with it like I usually do when I read something like this. All right, so let me roll over here. This is entitled Going to War Again for Israel by Chris Hedges from February 28th, 2026. And this was published in the Chris Hedges report on Substack. And as noted here, all of his illustrations are done by his really good friend, Mr. Fish. They're coming out with a book with a whole bunch of stuff about Gaza and Palestine. I would highly recommend subscribing to Mr. Hedges' Substack page. And when his book comes out, get a hold of it if you're inclined to talk about or read about Palestine. Once again, America is going to war for Israel. Once again, many will die for the Zionist state, including American service members. Once again, we will stumble blindly into a military fiasco. Once again, we will do the bidding of a foreign power whose interests are not our interest, but whose lobbyists have bought up our political class, including Donald Trump. Once again, we will violate the UN Charter by attacking a country that does not pose an imminent threat. This is not our war. This is part of Israel's demented vision of a greater Israel of dominating the Middle East. But Israel needs our military, our taxpayer dollars, our weapons to do it. And we have handed them the keys to our formidable arsenal. Architects of the war with Iran, which the administration feels no need to justify to the American public or to the international community, admit it will be not quick. Senator Tom Cotton, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, told CBS News on Saturday that the goal is not only to curb Iran's nuclear program, but to, quote, dismantle their terror support network, unquote. Quote, to do all that is going to take longer than the strikes on their nuclear program last summer, unquote, Cotton said. Quote, we're probably looking at weeks, not days, of joint efforts by the United States, Israel, and our Arab partners who have been attacked this morning, unquote. Israel's lackeys in the political class, along with their courtiers in the media, including former American Israeli Public Affairs Committee AIPAC employee Wolf Blitzer, as well as academia, are shining examples of Israel's transparent and often illegal meddling in the American political system. Forget Russia, forget China. No foreign government comes close to exerting Israel's influence. Democratic Party leaders are not opposed to attacking Iran. They are opposed to attacking Iran without being consulted. 24 Democrats leapt to their feet and applauded every time Trump threatened Iran or lauded Israel in his State of the Union address. The Biden administration and Democratic Party leadership made no effort to reinstate Barack Obama's Iran nuclear agreement. It focused instead on sustaining the genocide in Gaza. It cheered Israel's decapitation of Iranian proxies in Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. Kamala Harris and her feckless and tone-deaf presidential campaign promised to continue funding the genocide, which alienated many voters and labeled Iran our most dangerous enemy. Endless war is a bipartisan project. The flagrant interference by Israel in the American political system is documented in the Al Jazeera 4-part series, quote, The Lobby, unquote, which Israel and its supporters blocked from being broadcast. Pirated copies can be watched on the website Electronic Intifada. In the documentary, the leaders of the Israeli lobby are captured on a reporter's hidden camera explaining how, backed by the intelligence services in Israel, they discredit and silence American critics and use huge cash donations to control the American electoral process and political system. Israel's death grip on our political system is also documented in, quote, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, unquote, by John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt. If you wander off the reservation and become, quote, if you wander off the reservation and become critical of Israel, you will not only get money, AIPAC will go to great lengths to find someone who will run against you, unquote. Mearsheimer, professor of political science at the University of Chicago, says in a documentary, quote, and they support that person very generously. The end result is you're likely to lose your seat in Congress, unquote. Israel flies hundreds of members of Congress, often with their families, to Israel for lavish junkets at seaside resorts. These Congress members run up individual bills that frequently exceed $20,000. The Honest Leadership and Open Government Act of 2007 attempted to restrict lobbyists from offering paid trips lasting more than one day to members of Congress. But AIPAC, which has never been forced to register as a foreign agent, used its clout to insert a clause in the act to exclude so-called educational trips organized by charities that do not hire lobbyists. The AIPAC-affiliated charity utilized to navigate this loophole is called the American Israel Education Fund. Investment by Israel is worth it. The United States Congress in 2016 authorized a $38 billion per year defense and aid package from 2019 to 2028 for Israel. We squandered $4 to $6 trillion on the futile wars Israel and its lobby pushed for their war in the Middle East. Congress has, as well, authorized $21.7 billion in military aid to Israel to sustain the genocide. God knows the cost of this war, but it will likely be in the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. We are back to where we were in 2003, with a war whose utopian goal is regime change. It didn't work then. It won't work now. The same famous lies have been dredged up to justify this war, with the U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff telling Fox News that Iran is, quote, probably a week away, unquote, from having the materials necessary to make a nuclear bomb. This has been Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli lobby's mantra for 3 decades. I'm not sure how we are supposed to swallow this after Trump announced last July, following U.S. airstrikes, that, quote, all 3 nuclear sites in Iran were completely destroyed and or obliterated. It would take years to bring them back into service, unquote. One lie supersedes the next. Once again, we promised to bomb a country to liberate it, with Trump saying all he wants is freedom for the people of Iran, unquote. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Israeli Prime Minister, like Trump, is calling on the Iranians to seize the, quote, once in a generation opportunity, unquote, to take, quote, take to the streets en masse to complete the task of overthrowing the regime that is making your lives miserable, unquote. Quote, this is your time to join forces to overthrow the regime, to secure your future, unquote, Netanyahu said. That every other attempt at regime change in the Middle East resulted in disaster eludes them. This time they promised it will work. We may not have assembled a ground force as Bush did in 2003 for the Iraq War, but once you open the Pandora's box of war, war controls you. You don't control it. American troops will likely be killed as Iran targets U.S. bases in the region. The Iranian Navy has announced it is shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important oil checkpoint that facilitates the passage of 20% of the world's oil supply. This will potentially double or triple the price of oil and devastate the global economy. Oil installations along with U.S. ships and military bases in the region will be hit. Iran has already fired missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Salam Air Base in Kuwait, Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and U.S. bases in Jordan. Explosions have been reported in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thousands of innocents will die. Israel hit the elementary girls' school on Saturday in Minab, a city in the Hormozgan province of southern Iran. Iran's Tasnim news agency cited the judiciary of Minab as saying that the death toll had risen to 108. Well, interlude here, we know it's a lot more than that. Steady losses and a huge spike in oil prices will compound the frustrations of Trump and his Israel allies. These frustrations, like those during the 2 decades of war in Iraq and Afghanistan, will ignite a protracted regional war. Iran, under sustained attack, could eventually fragment and splinter, sending millions of refugees over its borders and igniting the chaos we engineered in Libya. But Israel, whose goal is to degrade the military capabilities of its neighbors, will get what it wants. We'll be left with a mess. All right, so let me pull this down here. Now, granted, that was written last Saturday. A lot has changed between today and last Saturday. As I mentioned, they documented a lot more little girls at that school died than 108, 165 plus, based on last count I saw. I'm sure there's probably been a lot more women and children killed in Tehran with all the bombing that's going on, and it's only going to get worse. And for what? Nobody really seems to have a good answer for that. Gurma Haggett, thank you for watching or listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll return again to listen to me offer a voice to what a lot of people are thinking these days. To say goodbye this week, I will leave you with this quote. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Slán go foill.